Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. Here you will learn all things related to healing from divorce, mind, body, and spirit, so you can create a beautiful new life filled with happiness. I'm Rachel Ruby, author of Divorce to Bliss, divorce coach, speaker, and attorney, and I'm so glad you found me here. Hello and welcome to the Divorce to Bliss podcast. I'm Rachel Ruby, and this is the Sex After Divorce series. And in this series, I speak with experts on sex and relationship who are top in their fields when it comes to understanding sexuality, sensuality, intimacy, body perception, and arousal, and the fear of sex after divorce. We will dive into issues that will help both men and women understand their bodies better so they can get excited about future intimate relationships and have happy sex lives after divorce. In this episode, we are going to be talking about how to have the best sex ever after divorce. My guest is Sheri Winston, and Sheri is a holistic sexuality teacher and a groundbreaking award-winning author and teacher of erotic education. She's the author of Women's Anatomy of Arousal, Secret Maps to Buried Pleasure, which won the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists 2010 Book of the Year. And she also wrote Succulent Sexcraft, Your Hands-On Guide to Erotic Play and Practice. She is a contributor to the award-winning Secrets of the Sex Masters as well. Sheri is the founder of Intimate Art Center. She offers pleasure-centered sex ed for grown-ups and a wide variety of practical and transformational intimate arts education. Sheri has practiced for decades as a sexuality teacher and is a former certified nurse midwife, gynecology practitioner, registered nurse, childbirth educator, and massage therapist. Sheri is just an incredible person. She's done so much, and I'm so excited to have her here today. So welcome to the podcast, Sheri.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, let's get into this. First of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you came to be so highly accomplished and how you came to be a sex educator?
Well, I think it's kind of an interesting story. I started out wanting to be an artist and then decided that was a silly way to make a living. And then I was really called to becoming a midwife. I was a massage therapist. I had a client who was pregnant. She invited me to her home birth, and that was it. The path was there. Now, in the United States, in order to be a certified nurse midwife, you've got to go to nursing school first. You got to get a 4-year nursing degree, which I didn't actually want to do because I didn't want to be a nurse, but in order to be a midwife, you had to do that. So I did that. I went to, this is after massage therapy and becoming a childbirth educator. And I went to nursing school and then finally got myself to midwifery school. And predominantly did home births and then birth center births. And along the way, I was always teaching. Teaching was just something I loved doing. And I was always learning because I wanted to help my women have the most awesome births possible. And so I was learning all of these skills that I was teaching my women about how to connect the mind and the body, how to use their pelvic floor muscles, how to use sound or imagery, all of these things that we can use to enhance the trance of labor. Because labor is an altered state of consciousness. But what I didn't realize for over 10 years was I was actually training myself to have better sex. I literally didn't know I was doing that, but I did know that it got easier to have orgasms. I could have more orgasms more easily from different kinds of activities. So I was aware that sex was better, but I was happily married and I just thought that's how it was for everybody. I just thought, it just gets better. Well, surprisingly enough, that's not the case. And the more I practiced clinically, the more I saw that wasn't the case for everybody. And I had an epiphany and I realized I had been training myself. At that point, I went, whoa, well, if it got this good, if this much better without me trying, what happens if I start learning this stuff on purpose. So I started studying Tantra and Taoist sexuality and Native American and Western sexological, studies. And at that point, sex kept getting better, which was fun. But also I was learning stuff in sex world that I could bring to birth world. And I'd already learned so much in birth world that I brought to sex world. And I started to see it's integrated. It's integral. It's not separate. It's not that women have a reproductive system and a pleasure system and an attachment and bonding system. We have one integrated, brilliant, genius, multi-level, multi-layer connected way of being with all of those things. And so when I got burned out on the whole getting up at 3:00 in the morning to catch a baby, I wound up transitioning into being a sexuality teacher because I love teaching. And so that's how Wholistic Sexuality was born. And it just,
fantastic.
It's the best foundation I could possibly have imagined for being a sex teacher was 20 whatever years in the world of birth. And so that's how I became a holistic sexuality teacher. And there isn't even a name for what I do. Because if you say you're a sex ed teacher, people think you teach in high school.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They think you teach kids. And occasionally I've done programs for adolescents and teens, but predominantly I teach adults. And everything I do is centered in an empowerment and liberation and really profound integration. So that's how I became a holistic sexuality teacher.
We have a lot of experience that let you get to that point. So that is so wonderful. And I can't wait to hear your little bits of wisdom and get into this topic. So before we jump into the kind of more juicy stuff, let's talk about some preliminary items. And one is that you say there are some things women don't consider when it comes to safety and sex. And so especially I think when you're coming out of divorce and you've done your healing and you're ready to go out into this dating world, many of us think because we are older that we don't need to think about safety. But what should we be thinking about in that realm?
So there's a couple different things. First of all, I want to sort of say there's personal physical safety, which we should consider. Right? Like, where are you meeting this person? Are you bringing them back to your house? Are you putting yourself in a physically unsafe situation? And I think women need to be aware of that. And again, if you've not been in the dating world for quite a while, you might not be aware of some of the risks. So I think it behooves us to educate ourselves about those kinds of risks. But the other risks are sexual. And the thing about sex is sex makes us stupid. When we get aroused, the thinking part of our brain shuts off. And so when we're turned on, it's not a good time to make decisions about what we want to do, how we want to do it, and how we want to be safe. So I think it's really important to have pre-sex conversations. And most of us never did that before in our lives. We don't see it modeled anywhere. We don't know how to do it. We might feel awkward or nervous about doing it. But I like to think that since we're older and wiser, we know better than to just go ahead and have sex without having a conversation or multiple conversations. And there's actually a blog post on my website. I think I sent you a link so people can go check it out, which gives more details. But I think that if we're having these conversations, first I want to acknowledge this is weird. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. And so I like to say, if there's something that's important, but it's uncomfortable, start the conversation. And this is a conversation to have with our clothes on, not when we're already physically, sexually or sensually engaged with somebody. This is the conversation that happens before that. And start that conversation with just saying what's true for you at that moment, which might go something like, I'm really nervous about having this conversation. I feel awkward. I've never done this before. I don't know how to do it. But I think it's really important that we have a conversation about what we want to do sexually, what kind of safety precautions we want to take, and a number of other things like what are we doing here? What are you looking for? What am I looking for? The thing about a sexual connection is that there's all different kinds of meanings that could have. Maybe you've been married for a long time, you never sowed any wild oats, and you just want to have a casual fling with somebody. Nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. Just be clear that's what you want. Maybe you are not interested in a casual fling and you are looking to start a relationship. Then be clear about that, because if you get sexual with somebody and they think, casual fling, bye, then it's going to hurt your heart.
Right.
Right. And we as the receivers in sex, it's often for us a more emotional experience than it is for men. Now, that's not true for all men, right? There are plenty of men who only want to have sex in a connected, intimate relationship. And there are plenty of men who would be happy to have sex with anybody who wants to have sex with them. And so I think we need to have conversations about what is this? What are you looking for? What does this mean? Do you have other partners? What are your agreements and arrangements with your other partners? Because maybe you want to be polyamorous, and maybe they've got other partners and it's great and everybody's honest and no one's going to get lied to. Maybe they do have other partners and they are cheating on their other partners, and you've got to decide if that's something that you would be okay with. Maybe they're not telling you the whole truth about some of those situations. So these are all things to consider. And then finally, the sort of nuts and bolts of it is, when it comes to sex, we are at risk. We are at risk of disease. If we are still in our fertile years, we're at risk of pregnancy. So we need to address those issues. What are we doing for contraception if it's needed? What do we want to do about safer sex practices? And one thing I like to think about it as is, what level of risk do we want to take when we're playing? We could decide, because we can navigate our boundaries. Again, we're grown-ups now. We can discuss these things. We don't just jump in and assume that means we're going to do everything. We're going to have intercourse. We can say, for starters, let's just cuddle. Let's kiss. Let's cuddle and kiss and keep all our clothes on. And then next time we can discuss the boundary for our next encounter. But for this encounter, let's stay clothes on, cuddle, kiss. There's not much I have to worry about when it comes to safer sex. Oral herpes, that's about it. Maybe if somebody has a cold, right? But that's like playing in the shallow end of the pool. And so if we stay in the shallow end of the pool, there's not a lot of risk. Once we decide we're going to move to oral sex, there is risk, and people don't think oral sex is risky, but it is. There are all sorts of things we can get from giving oral sex. And again, if our partner is a man with a penis in our throat, we can get a number of different sexually transmitted infections in our throat. If you're partnering with a woman, or if your male partner is partnering with you as a woman and is going down on you, there are some things they can get, but they are at less risk than we would be. So oral sex is not risk-free. There's hand sex, right? So there's a whole, from just cuddling, fondling, playing with, some naked parts, but not the most sexual bits. And then there's a spectrum, and each level of going deeper into the pool has more risk. And so then we get to discuss, what are we going to do? Are we going to use condoms? If you're going to go down on me, we're going to use some kind of a dental dam or saran wrap. If I give you oral sex, how do you feel about me doing that with a condom on your penis? And most men will be like, not really great about that. I don't really feel great about that at all. I'd really rather not have that. You can, of course, always go, well, then we won't do that. Right? These are the choices we get to make. And so I want people to just be conscious of that, and also really know that we get to choose how fast we want to get to the deep end of the pool. Okay. Just because we're grown-ups doesn't mean every sexual encounter has to include every available activity.
Right. Yeah. That's great advice, and something that I know a lot of people don't think about when they're getting back in the ring, so to speak, after divorce. So it's very important, especially with all the apps and all the, hooking up that's going on out there, you have to be careful. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So
I want to say one more thing, which is that, we may not know what we want to do yet with a partner when we start playing with them. So I recommend setting the boundary, staying in the shallow water, and don't change your boundary in the middle of your play session. Right? So here's the thing. Sex makes us stupid. So when I was thinking, I thought it would be a good idea not to do any risky behavior. Now we're fooling around and I'm all excited. And suddenly I'm like, hey, let's do all the risky behavior. What the heck? Forget it. I don't care. Because we're stupid at that point. So don't change your boundary in the middle of your sex play. You can say, next time we play, I definitely want to put some more things on our agenda, but not this, because we made an agreement and we're going to stick to it.
Yeah. And I love the idea of having that conversation too, because again, that's another thing that I think we don't think about. And is just talking and being authentic and just being you. And this is what I want. This is what it's been a while. It's, I'm excited, but I want to take it slow, or maybe, whatever. And I love that idea of having that preliminary conversation. You also talked to me when we met about ongoing partner conversations regarding sex. And you kind of touched on that a little bit and maybe changing things later. But why is it important to have these ongoing communications regarding sex, and why do we need to remember to do this? So, and also let's, I think you also were talking a little bit about making requests. So can you dive into that a little bit?
Well, so erotic communication, I taught actually a number of different classes about erotic communication. I think with our ongoing partners, we need to be in an ongoing conversation. We have to learn how to talk about sex. Most of us, again, never learned this, never had it modeled for us. So how do we go about doing this? So I think there are 3 things to consider. Imagine we're playing music with another musician. And sometimes we just get together and we have an improv session. It's just a jam session. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, where we're going to go, how long it's going to take, what kind of rhythm, whatever. We're just playing together. And that's great. But if that's all you do with your musical partner, you're not going to get better. You want to get better. Sometimes you have conversations about the music. Sometimes without playing music, you sit down like with your clothes on and you say, so how are we doing? What's working for you? What's working for me? Start with the good stuff. Always start with the good stuff, right? So, I'm also wondering if you'd like to explore this, because I've had this fantasy forever and I've never explored it with anyone. Would you like to hear about it? Yeah, absolutely. And so during that conversation, we can discuss where we might want to go, what we might want to try, what's working, and what could be better. And during that conversation, maybe we say, one of the things I realize is I'm really not good at making requests. Sometimes when we're having sex, I think about something I want, but I don't know how to ask for it. I don't want to feel like I'm telling you what to do. I don't want you to feel criticized. I'm in my arousal state. I'm in that altered state of consciousness. So words are hard at that point. It's hard to figure out what to say and how to say it. And so this is a challenge. What can we do about it? So that happens in that conversation. And then the third part is what's called a playpen. And a playpen is a time and a space that we set up to play a learning game. What game? Whatever game we want. Say we identified an issue. I don't know how to give you feedback. I don't know how to make a request. So we set up a playpen. Let's spend a half an hour 3 times this week playing with how to make requests or playing with how to give feedback. And maybe you switch. Maybe you take turns. You say, okay, let's take a half an hour on the couch Thursday afternoon. And I'm going to have 10 minutes where you're massaging my feet, something nice and neutral and non-sexual. And I make requests to you. And then we're going to take 5 minutes. You're going to tell me how it felt to get those requests. Then we're going to switch and you're going to have 10 minutes for me. And then I'm going to talk about how it felt. And that's our game for today. The next time we play that second one, you're going to tell me how to request it from you. You're going to give me the words that would work for you. And then I'm going to try that. And then we're going to do a third session without any prompting and play the game again. There's no end of games. You're just making it up to practice and develop skills. It can be communication. It can be touch skills. It could be oral sex skills, whatever kind of skills you want to develop. You can say things like, got that fantasy. Let's have a conversation about what that might look like to play the fantasy out and how we could do it in a way that would work for both of us. So there's no limit to what you can do in that playpen. But that's where you do your learning and practice and you're gaining your skills. And I think we should all be doing that in our ongoing relationships. And it's trickier maybe to do it with a new partner. But if you start establishing that as the normal thing you do with this person, then it gets easier. And it totally gets easier. That's the other thing. All of this stuff gets easier. The more we practice, the easier it becomes.
Yeah. And I think also with healing from divorce, I always talk about, being authentic and sharing your feelings. And so this goes along with that. And I love that idea of starting that at the beginning of any relationship so that you can stand in your authenticity, because it just furthers that whole mission of becoming the new you, the best and highest version of you, and stating, what you want, what you need, and hearing the same from your partner. So I love that. What about...
Sure. That when we've been in relationships before, we can look back and go, one of the things that wasn't working was we weren't communicating well, or the sex wasn't working great. We didn't know what to do about it. We didn't have tools to do something about it. And it gets the patterns get cemented into place and it's hard to change them. So when we're starting new relationships, it's a great time to go, okay, I'm going to do it different this time. I'm not going to go for years with never saying what I want or giving feedback or making requests. I'm going to learn how to do it. If I don't know how to do it now, I can learn.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Great advice.
Okay.
Let's go on a little bit more about, talk about how we can feel safe with our partners or comfortable with our sex partners. And you gave me this fabulous cat-dog metaphor. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit on that and how men and women learn sex in different ways.
Well, so it's a metaphor. Keep that in mind. It's a generalization. It doesn't apply to everybody all of the time. But one of the things I realized about myself a long time ago, even before I was teaching this stuff, is I'm wired very differently than my male partners. And sure, some things are the same, but when it comes to sex, guys tend to be ready very quickly. They get an erection quickly. Our cultural model of what we do in sex is a very male-centered model. And that doesn't really work that well for most women. I became very aware I need more time. And the more I learned about it, it's like, oh, right, women need foreplay. And I hate that word, by the way. I like to think of it as warm up. Because it sounds like it's an appetizer. You don't really need it. And like the main course is the intro course, instead of saying, oh, the whole journey is the sex. Everything that you do is like that. Way. But the more I started thinking about it, the more I realized I'm actually kind of like a pussycat. And this was the first thing I realized. Right? If you come over to my house and you want to make friends with one of my pussycats, you don't run up and grab the pussycat and roll around her back and rub her tummy, because you will be bleeding and she's going to be out of there and you won't get near her again. Right? Now, if I had a dog and you wanted to make friends with my dog, most dogs, in 30 seconds, you could be rubbing that belly, right? Because dogs are easy and enthusiastic. And if they haven't been traumatized, they're usually pretty eager to get their belly rubbed. And so I started to realize that for most women, our core sexual energy is more like that pussycat energy. We need to feel connected. We need to feel safe. We want you to start by rubbing behind her ears, not my human ears, my cat ears, right? Start rubbing the safe parts, where you rub the cat's ears and then it starts to feel safe and it recognizes you can give the pleasure, and then they let you rub under their chin. And if you take your time and you go at the right pace, what's the right pace? The pussycat's pace. You won't know because the pussycat doesn't have any words. The pussycat only has body language. And body language is whether the cat is opening towards you or withdrawing away from you. So if you are tuned into the pussycat and you are attentive to their body language, you will go at their pace, and eventually, sooner or later, you will get that purring puddle of pussycat you're after. Puppy dogs, well, dogs are wonderful, right? They're enthusiastic and active and eager and playful. And for most men, their core sexual energy is that dog energy. So what do dogs want most in life? They want a job, and they want to do a good job. They're focused on the ball. You want them to fetch that ball. They're going to get that ball and bring it back to you. And then you're going to go, good dog. And they're going to be like, yeah, I'm a good dog, right? So the masculine, the high masculine, the mature high masculine is exemplified in the service dog, right? We don't have seeing eye cats for a reason, right? We have seeing eye dogs because that dog can focus and be in service and give their service. And that's the high masculine. And so when we're playing together, if we don't understand the difference, and if our male partner has looked at a lot of porn and only seen this male-centered model of sex, they're going to be too quick. They're not going to connect. They're not going to go at our pace. They're not going to pay attention to our signals of opening and closing. They won't know what to do that. And then we're going to be frustrated because they're going too quick. And now I'm not turned on enough. And now he wants to have intercourse, but I'm not ready. And we get into all this mishigas, because things aren't working. And most people don't understand. Pussycats, or people who have core pussycat energy, which is mostly women, but some men, it takes time. For most of us, it takes 30 to 45 minutes to get into a deep arousal trance and to have our genitals get fully engorged. And if people are only having a sexual encounter that lasts 15 minutes, no wonder we have a gigantic orgasm gap in this culture, which we do. And so if we start recognizing how we're different and how we can learn from each other, right? So I can learn how to use my internal skills. We'll talk about that. How I can use my skills to enhance my arousal. And I can get aroused more easily, more quickly. My partner can learn from my pussycat ways, and he can learn how to slow down, enjoy the journey, enjoy all the other parts of his body other than his genitals, and how to slow down and spread it out and have everybody gets more pleasure. So that's a short version of the pussies and puppies.
Can you talk a little bit more about the porn and how, I know you were telling me how it's, how most men learn about sex, and specifically what you said about what we don't see with the women in the background.
So in porn, which is very focused on, women that are totally turned on and ready to do anything, those women have probably spent 30 to 45 minutes with a vibrator before the camera got turned on. So we're not seeing that. We're not seeing the warm up. We're not seeing the time it actually takes. And so if you, and a lot of women too, if men and women are learning about sex and sexual technique from porn, they've got a bad teacher. It's like watching sitcoms to learn how to be a parent, right? That's not where you learn how to be a good parent. Right? That's just entertainment. And we have to think of porn that way. It's entertainment. It's erotic entertainment, but it's not where you're going to learn good technique. It's not where you're going to learn how most women operate, how their arousal operates, and how to turn them on. And we've got this weird cultural myth that men are supposed to know how to turn us on and how to give us orgasms. They don't know. And if they're using their own experience, well, their experience is a dog-like experience. They get turned on most of the time, really easily. Their arousal and erotic energy starts in their genitals and in the sex center in our brain and can just stay there. Pussycat energy, it doesn't start in our genitals. It starts out here. It starts in the connection and the context and the relationship. And then the energy has to flow past all of our other chakras, that go past our thinking and our communication and our heart and our power. And it's got to come up past our safety center. And then it gets to the genitals. And it can get blocked very easily. Pussycat, we're easily distracted. Dog energy is focused. They're good at focus, generally speaking. We are usually not so good at focus, and we get distracted, and we wind up lying there going, oh my gosh, look at the cobwebs. I got dust. Right? And so
that's so interesting.
We can learn how to manage that. And those are our internal skills.
Okay. I find it, before you get into that, I find it so interesting that what you said about porn and that kind of being the educator for so many men, like learning what sex is and how I turn on a woman. And the fact that, and I didn't know this either, but that the women are back there for 30 to 45 minutes with the vibrator getting excited before they come on to the set, so to speak. And that's really interesting, because I think it obviously sends this message to men like, oh, all I gotta do is, just rub her and she's going to be hot and ready. And so I love that you explained. And I think men everywhere need to know this, that this is why people, I think, sometimes say there's a problem in the connection when it comes to sex between a man and a woman, because if the woman isn't saying, if they're not talking about it, like you said, not communicating, and they're just expecting to, that the partner's going to know what to do, and the man doesn't really know what to do because he's basing it on porn, then we have a big problem. And that's really kind of an awakening, I think. So,
and again, our cultural map of sex is that male-centered model. And that model is the man gets an erection and you have penis and vagina intercourse. And in the movies, you quickly get to a mutual simultaneous orgasm and it's over. That's really, really not how it works for most people. In fact, for the majority of women, intercourse is not the best way to get to an orgasm. Right? So I was teaching an orgasm class once, and I had a woman who had started by saying she doesn't have orgasms. And then as the class goes on, she goes, well, I do have orgasms. I don't have them in the right way. I'm like, oh, what's the right way? With intercourse. I'm like, oh, well, let me tell you, about 60% of women do not have orgasms from intercourse, or at least not frequently. And so that's just a cultural myth. We can learn how to do that, by the way. That's a learnable skill, along with all these other skills we can learn. But if we're just starting to, especially if we're an orgasmic novice, if you've never had an orgasm, it's okay. You're not broken. There's just stuff you haven't learned yet. And this is really important. If you're orgasm challenged, sometimes you have them, sometimes you don't. You don't really know why or how. It's just kind of a big mystery. There's stuff you can learn so you can become orgasmically proficient, which means you can always get to your orgasm one way or another. And again, usually intercourse is not the easiest or first way to get there. And then we can develop orgasmic mastery, which means we can have lots of different kinds of orgasms from lots of different stimulation. It means that we can turn ourselves on. We can use our inner toolkit and turn ourselves on. And we've got the skills to communicate with partners so they can learn what turns us on.
Great. Well, let's talk about some of those solo skills that women need to learn so that they can be better educated on their orgasm. And learning how to have them at the right times or the times they want to have them. So
right. You can
take it away.
A virtuoso, right? You can become skilled. These are skills. So again, a cultural myth is that sex is natural. We don't have to learn anything. And sure, that's true for tigers, but we're human. So for us, sex is natural and learned. It's both. So we can learn how to turn ourselves on. We can learn how to get more and more aroused. Oh, by the way, this is for whatever kind of plumbing you have. This is for every human. So we all are equipped with this, what I think of as an inner toolkit. We've got tools of the mind, the body, the heart, and the spirit. Our body tools, which is sort of usually one of the main things we want to learn, is we can use our breathing. Our breath is a powerful tool for enhancing our arousal and expanding our orgasm. We can use sound, second most powerful tool. It's really liberating to free our sounds of pleasure. Touch, taste, smell. We've got tools of the mind. We can use our imagination. That's like the Swiss Army knife of tools because we can imagine anything we want. We also learn how to pay attention, how to focus, right? Our attention's like this little screen, this little flickering screen, and we can learn how to expand that. We've got skills of the heart. I think courage is a heart skill. Self-love is a heart skill. And courage it doesn't mean we're not afraid. It means we do something anyway because it's necessary or important, right? Mm-hmm. And if we are so inclined, we have tools and skills of the spirit. How do we make it sacred or special, right? Through maybe ritual or something like that. And the thing about all of these is that it's all about enhancing our arousal trance, the altered state of consciousness of arousal. And humans have been enhancing their trance throughout time. And every culture does it. And they all use similar tools, right? Every mind-body technique you'll ever learn starts with focusing on the breath, right? We always start with let's focus on our breathing because the breath is actually the bridge between our conscious and our unconscious mind.
Yep.
Chanting, drumming, singing, dancing, praying, those are all trance enhancement human skills. And we can bring that to our sex. Everything that we can do by ourselves, we can do with a partner. So I can be by myself and I can play with my breathing and I can breathe deeper and I can breathe into my belly and I can breathe and play with sound and I can do all that by myself. And if we're being sexual, we can do those together. We can breathe together to get synchronized and start getting our body rhythms entrained with each other. We can make sounds together. We can play with all of these things. So this is a very, very short version of this. I mean, there's tons of stuff in my books and on my website about it. But these are the skills and tools we use to train ourselves to have more pleasure, more awareness, more easily stimulated, and again, to have these kinds of orgasms that you hear about in the movies and the books where the fireworks go off. For real.
Oh, that's great. And so for anyone who's interested in learning more about this, you can check out Sheri's website, which we'll have at the end, and also her books. And sounds like a really fascinating topic to get into and get excited about to help spice up your sex life, right? So
I think more than that in some way, actually, because I think this is profoundly liberating.
Yeah.
In a way that ecstasy is our birthright. I've been at home births, particularly water births, and the baby is born and the baby is not crying. That's our cultural model. The baby comes out and cries. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
When the baby is born in this peaceful, loving environment where everybody's in this shared state of consciousness and the mother in her labor is, and the baby comes out, particularly if it's in the water, and the baby comes out beaming. They're like little Buddhas. They're like, Everybody's in that state. That's our birthright. And so when we start to access it, we get empowered in every area of our life. So this is bigger than sex, really.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah. I love that.
Right.
Yeah. What about partner skills? We were chatting before about the difference between older men and younger men. Can you get into that a little bit?
A little bit. I'll start with talking briefly about male anatomy, which is that generally speaking, most men, when they're younger, it's easy to get an erection. It's easy to sustain an erection. And again, our cultural model is that's how men are. For many men, as they age or have health issues or both, that erection becomes a little less easily accessed. And sometimes they have erectile difficulties. Sometimes they have complete erectile dysfunction. Maybe a man with diabetes or something like that might not have any ability to have an erection. So I think it behooves us, if we're partnering with these men, first of all, to let them know, hey, erections are great. If you have them, great. If not, that's okay. There's so many fun things we can do without a hard penis. It's not the end of the world if you don't get hard. It's important to understand it might wax and wane. They might be hard at one point and then get soft, and that's not a big deal. We shouldn't feel like because he's hard right this minute, we must have intercourse because the hard penis is available. That's not the time to have intercourse. The time to have intercourse is when your body is ready, when your whole, body mind is aroused and your genitals are fully engorged. And if there's a hard penis, that's the time for intercourse. But most of us have not been good guardians of our gait. And so we've often had what I call premature penetration because we think that's what we're supposed to do. He has a hard on. I'm supposed to let him put it in. We're good girls. We're nice. And that's just not nice to ourselves. We're not being kind to ourselves. We don't help our partners understand that just because maybe I'm lubricated, that's an early sign of arousal. That's not deep arousal. So we need to be the ones to go, okay, now is time. Now is the time. Not because you were ready, but I am. And so if that erection comes and then it wanes, generally speaking, you can probably get it to come back again with some, oral effort or something like that. We can usually find a way. We might want to use some toys. Penis rings are a great toy for men who have some erection challenges. And it's just not a big deal whether it's there or not. So I just want to put that out there so that, especially if you're partnering with a new guy, let him know right off the bat. If you have an erection, great. If not, it's okay. It's fine either way. Yeah.
Got it. And now we come to one of, I think, the most interesting parts of this conversation, or will be, and that is, can you help us understand the female genital anatomy? And in regards to sex and orgasm, why don't many women and men understand this? You've alluded to this, but let's get a little deeper into this.
So we've got cultural maps of female genital anatomy in textbooks, sex books, and they're inadequate and incorrect and sometimes just plain wrong. And I know that's an outrageous thing to say. In this day and age of information, you would think all information is just available. We're talking about a human body. It's been around for a long time. How could we possibly not know what's actually there? And we don't. And it's crazy, but it's the truth. So women have a network of structures, separate but connected structures that are all made out of erectile tissue. Erectile tissue is what a penis is made out of. So we already know what it does. It goes from being small and soft to getting big and hard. And it does that by getting engorged, by filling up with blood that gets trapped in those tissues. That's engorgement. Female bodies have just as much erectile tissue as male bodies. And that's like the $1 million message here, right? Just as much erectile tissue.
Yeah.
So if you think it's all about the head of the clitoris, no, that's the tip of the volcano. It's an awesome tip of the volcano. It's a great part. I'm all for giving it the adoration it deserves. But it's only one part of a multi-part network of structures. And so for many women, this was certainly the case for me, for the first, 15 years I was having sex, I thought my stimulation and orgasm was all about the head of the clitoris. And I also didn't understand really, I thought, well, why don't I have orgasms with intercourse? There must be something wrong with me or them. I don't know. Something's wrong here. And I kind of like, well, the head of my clitoris isn't getting stimulated. So how could this be a good activity? I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense from, a evolutionary perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the truth is that's because it's not all about the head of the clitoris. We actually have
a pillow.
I'm going to get me on the screen so I make sure that I can make sure you're seeing everything. So here we have the vulva pillow, and she is anatomically correct. You can't see most of it because it's underneath, but we can see the head of the clitoris. The clitoris has 3 parts. There's a shaft that's right here under the hood, and right there, there's the shaft. And then there are legs, and the legs are like this, like the legs of a wishbone, like these 2 fingers that go about 3 or 4 inches down here and here. Now, I highly recommend, you could read about this in my books, website, on the online classes, whatever. Go on a tour of your own anatomy and find all the stuff I'm telling you about. And your tour should have 3 phases. Number 1, check it all out when you're not aroused at all. Feel everything I'm going to tell you about. Look at it in a mirror. Then play with yourself. Or if you have a handy person who wants to help, they can help. And get like medium level aroused. Go back and check it all out again. And then play some more and get to the point where you're almost having an orgasm. Like the highest level arousal. Stop. That's the hard part, stopping. And check it all out again. You're going to find everything I'm going to tell you about right now. Now, the head of the clitoris you can find no matter what. The shaft you can feel no matter what. The legs down here, I can only feel mine at the highest level of arousal. And then you're only going to feel the top, and you got to push in right in here, and you'll feel something that's like, I don't know. It's like, it might be as thick as a pen. It might be more like a cord or something, like a little ropey thing. Okay. But there's more. So then we've got erectile tissue under the labia, under the lips. Big wad here and a big wad here, one on either side. And when you first feel around, you're going to go, I don't know what she's talking about. I feel there's skin, there's fatty tissue, there's some muscle. What? What is she talking about? Keep rubbing. Keep rubbing, keep playing, squeezing, rubbing, playing, squeezing, and it's going to puff up. And you are going to see this big, juicy wad of erectile tissue under here on either side. And when these get big, they get really big. So the first time I found about this, figured this out and read about it, I went and I checked it out on myself. And I still remember to this day looking in the mirror going, holy cow, like, how could I have missed this? How is it that I didn't know that I had these? And these are one of the keys to having penetration feel really good when these are big and puffy, because think about it, when these are not engorged, and there's something moving in and out of the vaginal opening, it could feel good, but it's not going to feel awesome. But when this erectile tissue is big and engorged and kind of squishing that opening a bit, it's going to start feeling awesome. But there's more. There's 2 more big wads of erectile tissue inside. One is above the roof, so you put your fingers in and up, and the other is under the floor. You can put your thumb in and press down. So the erectile tissue that's above the roof is what people call the G-spot. Terrible name. Grafenberg, who discovered it, doesn't have one. Well, he's dead now anyway, but he didn't have one then. It's not a spot. It's actually a tube of erectile tissue that surrounds the tube of the urethra. So when this is really big and engorged, when you've played with it and got it all big and juicy and puffy, you can actually, from the outside, you can see it's like the end of a roll of paper towels right around the urethral opening, and also can play with it from here. And then the last one is underneath it. It's actually between the vaginal and anal canals. You probably have to put your thumb in anywhere from a 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches. And again, when you're not aroused, you're going to push down on the floor. You're going to go, I don't know what she's talking about. It all just feels like vagina. And then you're going to play around with it more and rub it and squeeze it. And at a certain point, you're going to go, oh, there's a big lump of really sensitive, nice, juicy tissue under here to play with. When all of those structures are engorged, that's when you're going to get the best arousal and the easiest orgasms. That's one of the keys to learning things like having orgasms from penetration when this whole thing is engorged. And generally speaking, for most of us, this is why 30 to 45 minutes is necessary. We need to get our mind aroused. We need to change our state of consciousness, and we need to get this whole network engorged. So that's the Cliff Notes version, or the Clit Notes version. I don't think people have Cliff Notes anymore anyway.
No,
do you know what I'm referring to?
Oh, I sure do. I remember buying those little yellow things, those little yellow books.
I figured we don't have them anymore. Anyway,
I'm not that young.
You look young.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's a lot more interesting anatomy and things about the uterus and all kinds of other great stuff to know about this amazing body we have. And unfortunately, there's not many places to find this information.
Yeah. Well, you are a wealth of knowledge on this, obviously. And I appreciate you so much coming on here and giving us a little look into this and how much more there is to explore. So I'm going to put your link up on the screen to the Intimate Arts Center. And also I'm going to put the link about this, the safe sex article. And
please
if anybody wants,
read that.
please read that, everyone. And please, check out Sheri's books. I'm assuming that you can get to the books through the link to the Intimate Arts.
Them on Amazon.
On Amazon? Okay, fantastic. Fantastic.
Women's is also available as the Kindle version, but the physical book is better. There's an audio version, which I narrated, which was fun with a download.
Okay.
You get the anatomy images. Oh, I drew the anatomy images myself. Just there. And
so we just, Yeah. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you just saw the books. And again, if you need more information, you can go to the website. You can also always reach out to me if you need to find out how to contact Sheri. And, thank you so much for being here today, for all this wonderful information. Everybody has the means now to get to the tools so you can have amazing sex after divorce. So please utilize them, because I think we are all much happier when we know more about how to have great sex. Yeah?
I think so too. And I think we're more whole. Like it's in the, with the W sense of the word, but that there's this part of us, for a lot of us, when sex hasn't been as great as we think it should be for whatever reason, where we just feel like there's something wrong with us, this deep feeling that a lot of women, my body's not right, my mind isn't right, whatever. We're just always feeling so bad about ourselves for some reason or another. And when you start learning how to have awesome sex,
yeah, definitely. Juicy. Thank you, Sheri. Thank you so much for being here and giving us all this wonderful information. And everyone go out there and learn more. You have no excuse now, right?
Make it easy.
Thanks, Sheri. Take care.
You are so welcome. And it's my pleasure to do this. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
You're so welcome. Thank you.